Hello everyone, let's wait a few more minutes until others join us and then we'll start. Okay, let's start. So, hello everyone. Today we're going to continue talking about object-oriented programming. So I checked the tasks about the branching. So everything is fine for those who sent me, and yeah, everything is fine. I marked it, and also for those who also completed the task about the arrays. I will check it this week. Yeah, so just in case maybe it did not push it or something like that, so please let me know. Okay, that's about what we had before. And so now let's continue then talking about object-oriented programming. The plan for today is that we finished the theory part, the presentation part about object-oriented programming, and then we'll go to the practical tasks. Today we'll do two tasks. The first task will be the first assignment. From the practical assignments about object-oriented programming, I shared in Discord chat, so you can check it there. That's first thing. Secondly, one moment. Yeah, there are actually lots of tasks, so we will. Not a lot, there are 4 tasks, but we will do them during the next 2 sessions, today and tomorrow. So we'll go through them. So yeah, that's about the practical part, and so let's go ahead. So regarding the object-oriented programming, as you remember, last time when we talked about the object-oriented programming, we talked about several things. So first of all, we have actually 2 things. We have the classes and we have the objects. And the key point to distinguish is to distinguish them and to understand what is the class and what is the object. So comparing to that would be the case when we actually, like if we talk about the real life, then the case would be that the class is something that describes the object. For example, there would be the class of the computers. Like it means if the class name is computer, then it means that we talk about all the computers in the world. If we talk about one particular computer, which is, for example, your computer, you are currently using, that would be the object, yeah, the actual computer as the physical object. So that is about just the overview. In general, for the classes, we have some additional things. So it's not really, if we talk about the classes are not really only the templates. Actually, they can be used as the templates, and in most cases, they are used as the templates. But we also shortly talked about the static and non-static elements. So if we talk about non-static elements, then we can just briefly say that these elements of the class, they actually define the template of the object. Yeah? So it means that we define the structure of the class, we define the elements of the class, and from this class we can create the object. Yeah. Then there are the static parameters of the class, static characteristics of the class, static properties of the class. These are the attributes and methods which belong directly to the class, so they physically, let's say, exist. Yeah, we do not use them as the template, so we just basically use them as something what works. And yeah, the brief thing would be that shortly we can say that the instance non-static attributes and methods, they belong to the objects, and static properties and methods, they belong to the classes. And it means that they can be used, I mean, static is what can be used from the class. Instance, non-static, that is what can be used from the object only. So that's the overall difference between them. So that's yeah, and since we talk about the classes, then we have 2 main things. The main concept is based on 2 things. We have the attributes and we have the methods. So the attributes. So inside the class we have the attributes and we have the methods. So the attributes actually define the property of the object. Yeah. So if we have, I mean, if I talk about non-static properties, then they define the object. So let's say that if that's object person, then we can say that the person has name, surname, age, date of birth, and so on. Yeah, so all the particular parameters that belong to the class of people, class of person. And so the class name is person, then it means that then the parameters, the attributes will be the something that belongs to the person, right? So that's about how we use the parameters. The methods is, and if we talk about the methods, that means that it is something what defines the behavior. And in this case, again, when we talk about non-static objects or non-static methods, then it means that these are the methods which define the behavior of the objects. Yeah. So it means that we can, let's say, last time we did some examples there, and the easiest, the most direct example would be that, let's say that we have some kind of object, and and the simple thing what we can do is that we say maybe get some information about the object. Yeah. Also, we may do some, like, let's say if the object is something more complex. Let's say that the object, the class name is person. Then what we can do, and we have the date of birth populated under the person. Then it means that we can, let's say, create the method get age, which will then calculate the age based on the current date, for example. Yeah. So again, every behavior what can be directly related to the object. Yeah. Also, it may change some values for the object. It may do some calculations. As an example, it may send the information to somewhere, for example, and so on. So lots of different things which directly belong to the object, yeah, and which are related to the object. So that's about non-static. And if we talk about static methods and attributes, then again that is something what belongs directly to the class. Then the attributes should then be, let's say, the values of the attributes will be same for all the objects. Like again, if we have class person, then we have the static attribute. If it is changed or modified, then it will be modified actually for the class in general, not for each object specifically. Yeah, for each class in general, for each class we can create multiple objects. Yeah, so it means that there will be multiple objects. They all will have different values stored under the attributes. Yeah, so they will also have different behavior and so on. Yeah, so that's about the attributes. And again, if we have static attributes and static let's say static attributes, then they will actually, there will be, if we have one static attribute, it will be only one, and for each object it will be actually one, just only one, which is taken for one for all, which is taken from the definition of the class. Yeah. The same for the methods. Yeah, so the methods can be called directly without creating the objects. I mean, if the methods are static. That's why, again, that's why previously we used only static methods. Yeah, as I said, just in all the examples where we created where we used the functions, we used only static functions. Why? Because we did not create the objects. Yeah? So if the object is not created, then the only way I can call the function from the class, the method, the function from the class, is that I just simply define it as static. Yeah? If I don't define it as a static, I need to have the object, because again, non-static, it is what belongs to the object, and Static, this is what belongs to the class. So it means, again, if I want to use static method, then I can simply call it from the class. But if I want to use non-static method, instance method, then I must have the object to then be able to call this method. Yeah. Otherwise, so that's it. Yeah. So, because for example, if let's say that you have the method get age, yeah. If you have the method get age, which is stored under the class person, then of course you need to have the actual person. You cannot just simply call the method get age from the person class in general. Yeah, that won't be possible. Because again, if the class is person, then it means that we talk about all the persons in the world. Yeah. But since we have such method get age, it means that something what is directly related to the persons, to one particular person. Okay. That's why we must have the object. We must create the object, then be able to call the methods, so non-static methods. Yeah. Also, one thing what we discussed is the access modifiers. So most likely you will see that we use private, protected, or public. For the protected access modifier, we will talk a little bit later, because this is more complicated type, more complicated access modifier. Right now, we will use it from our experience. We can use it as protected attribute or as protected access modifier, and that will be actually the same as we use private access modifier. Yeah, so that's about the access modifiers, and the idea is that private, this is what I mean in general way. Private means that is something what is available for the object only, directly for the object. So it means that no one outside the class, no one outside the object can access it. Yeah, so that is something what is not allowed to be touched by any code, any instance outside the class. So that is encapsulated directly in the class, and we're not allowed to touch it from outside the class. Same is for the methods, and it means that something can be called only inside the class. And yeah, then if we have public, then it means that we can simply access it from everywhere. So that's about the access modifiers. So the object. So that is what I said. Yeah. So there are also internal, internal, private, protected. But yeah, most we will focus on these three. They are actually most popular. Yeah, then the encapsulation, it's also means that we hide the data inside the classes, inside the objects. So yeah, the creation of the object will happen if we call if we use the keyword new. That actually helps us creating new objects. Yeah, one more thing before. We talked about the arrays, we talked about the strings, and actually the arrays and the strings, basically the string is also, as you know, strings are also the arrays of characters, so they all are objects. And to create the object, the only way how we can create the object is that we use the keyword new. Yeah. So, and yeah, once we call it, it will basically return us the object which then can be used. Yeah, and in fact, when we use the keyword new, then in fact we trigger the constructor of the class. So what does it mean? It means that It means that that when we create the method, or when we create the object, there is a special method triggered at this point. Yeah, so yeah, that's the actual method, which is called constructor. From the definition of the constructor, I mean not from the definition, by by definition of the constructor is the method which is called the same way as the name of the class. Yeah, so if we have the inside the class we have the method which actually has, first of all, it has no returning type, because the actual returning type is the class type by itself, so there is nothing to define, and then you see the name is the class name, then it means that this is the constructor of the class. Yeah? That's the constructor, and I mean from the name of the constructor, this is something what constructs the object for us. Yeah. For the constructors, we can pass the parameters, so the same way as for the methods. Yeah, the same as for the methods, we can pass the parameters. Same way for the constructor. By default, if we don't define anything, the constructor will be just simply empty method without any parameters. So we don't see it, but it actually is triggered. It's just basically empty code without any parameters. But if we define the constructor, we can define the constructors by ourselves, and then we can first we can also create the initial constructor without any parameters, and then just write some maybe default parameters as an option. Then we can do it. On the other hand, we can also define the parameterized constructor. It means that this constructor will have the parameters, and then usually these parameters are used to define the object, then and to describe the object. Yeah, so that is about the constructors. For the constructors, one thing just to remember for you, as you can see by just the simple way of creating the objects is that we just simply type new and name of the class and the rounded brackets. That means that we create the object. If we define parameterized constructor, then it means that the object. If we define parameterized constructor, it means that the object can only be created with the parameters provided. Yeah. So if we define constructor, that's a custom constructor we define, then this option is not valid anymore, unless we define empty constructor. Why? Because in this case we say that there is no constructor without the parameters. Yeah. So it means that in this case, like what we see here, we have constructor which has the parameters, and we have no other constructor. Yeah. In fact, we may have multiple constructors with different parameters. Yeah. If we define multiple constructors, then they must have different parameter signature. Yeah. Because again, for each method, yeah, that's also regarding the topic about the functions and the methods. For each method, we have the parameters. Yeah. So we define the parameter by saying the type name and the data type, and the name of the attribute. Yeah. Then we use comma to then define next attributes. Yeah. So for each method, we have the attributes, again type, name, and so on. Then inside the method, again for each method, they will be used as the variables. Yeah. So that's the same way. If you define the variable, then you can also define the variable as the input parameter, but with the only exception that the value will be passed when the constructor is called. In this case, that's constructor. In general, the rules are the same as for the methods. Yeah. So, and again, for each method, for each constructor, if if constructor is parameterized and method is parameterized, then we should follow the sequence. Yeah. So it means that if we have the sequence of parameters defined, we cannot pass the parameters in a different way. We must provide the parameters in the way that the first one is the model name, the second one is the color of the model, and the third one is the year of the model. So yeah, we need to follow the sequence. And once we define again parameterized constructor, then we cannot create the object without providing these parameters. So that's the rule. That's the rule, but on the other hand, we can create empty constructor without, I mean not empty, but unparameterized constructor. We don't care about what's the code is there, and in this case, you will be able to you'll create the object without the parameters. So that's about the constructors. In fact, yeah. So you will see that most of the constructors are public. In some cases, constructors can also be different, like not only public, but they can also be private and protected. These are more special cases. We'll talk about them a little bit later. Yeah, so that's about it. But in general, right now we'll use public constructors only. Okay, do you have any questions so far? This is the recap from the object-oriented programming, what we had before. Are there any questions? Okay, then we can move on. Hope it's clear. If not, then please let me know. Yeah, so here you can see also another constructor example. This is what I said before. We can have parameterized constructor and we can have empty constructor. I mean constructor without any parameters. In this case, the thing is that what we usually do in such cases we have the constructor where we can define default parameters, like let's say that if something is not provided, then we can default the values there. Yeah, so this is how we usually do. On the other hand, we can also use this approach to be able to create the object without providing the parameters to constructor. Yes, so we simply need to have empty constructor, then I mean non-argument constructor, then we can use this approach. That's the option. Yeah, so and usually it means that we use it to define them. Define default parameters to the object to be maintained. And yeah, so then for the argument constructor, usually we use argument constructors to fill the values for the attributes of the objects. So and yeah, that's about it. So we can create the object and pass them parameters. So in this case, if we create the object, what we had before, without any parameters, then this will use default parameters, default values for the object. And if we pass the parameters, then non-default parameters will be used. I mean, these parameters will be used for the object. Yeah, and now we can. Yeah, so if there are any questions so far, please let me know. Then about the methods. So in fact, yeah, there was the in the spreadsheet I shared with you last time. There was the question about the functions. In fact, as I mentioned before, the methods and the functions they are the same. Yeah, so this is the same thing. We just basically can use them as the synonyms. And so in this case, I can explain what are the functions in more details when I talk about the methods. And so yeah, what the methods are, the methods and functions. So the methods are actually the part of the classes. Yeah, so again, we have the class, then we may define the method in the class. So the method, again, it does some actions. So the same way as we previously, from the beginning, we used static void main. The same way we can also, and yeah, so in static void main, we did some actions, like ask user to provide the input, just do some calculations there, do some branching, some logic, lots of different stuff. Then we previously we did it inside the method static void main method. But in general, all these actions can be done in different methods. Yeah? So as you want. So basically, the idea is that you split the code into the methods. So first of all, why do we need it? The answer is simple. We need to. There may be different needs for this. The most usual need is to not repeat the same code twice or more. Yeah, so like if we have, let's say, 10 lines of code which are the same or practically the same, then inside our code, then it means that we can split them into the, not split them, but simply create the method, place the code there, and then call the method from there. Call the method from the place where these lines were located before. So what's the advantage? First of all, you don't need to, basically the first advantage is that at the result you will not have the same code written twice. Again, that's not only about your ability to repeat same things more than once, to write the same text more than once. That's not the problem. The main problem is that first of all, the code will be less readable if you don't have the methods. Because again, if you have more code, it's harder to read it, right? Same as just for all the texts you may have. If you have more text, more symbols, that it is obviously that it will take more time to read it, and it will take even more time to understand it. So that's the complicated thing. What we want to escape in the programming. That's the first thing. Second thing is the ability to maintain the code. Again, if you have, let's say, the same thing written, let's say, 5 times, and then there is the need to do the change in this code. This is the typical thing. So in case you don't use the method approach, in case you don't simply create the method, then put the logic there and then repeat this logic 5 times. I mean, repeat the calling of this method 5 times. Then, if you just simply copy paste the same code 5 times, then in case you need to do any changes, you would need to change the code in all 5 places. Of course, this is not a good thing because of multiple reasons. So the first reason is that it's obviously that you can let the mistake. So you can again, if you write more, there is more chance that you make the mistake, and it's absolutely fine. In programming, we always make the mistakes, and the main thing for us is to find ways to escape the mistakes. The same is here. Yeah, if we write less code, we make less mistakes. That's one thing. So in this case, we have less possibility to make the mistake. Secondly, of course, that's the time. Yeah, like if we need to repeat the same call, if we need to repeat the same actions from our side 5 times, then of course it takes more time. Yeah, so these are the main things. So the readability of the code, the maintenance of code. Yeah, so these 2 things are main things there. And sometimes it also provides more functionality. Like again, if we talk about object-oriented programming with the objects, then we may use the parameters of the objects to then execute the methods correctly. That's the thing. And yeah, so that's the main thing. And yeah, so for the methods, what do we have? We have the attributes. We may have the attributes, we may have no attributes. So yeah, this means that the method is parameterized. There is the sequence of the attributes which are defined basically same or similar way as the variables. Okay, so it means that we must have the data type, then we must have the name of the variable we'll use. Yeah, then also for the methods we can have returning value, or we can have no returning value. Means that we define the method as the void. Okay, so it means that nothing will be returned for the method, and that is practically the same way as we have the functions in mathematics. So we have the function where we can provide the parameter, that's usually f from x, and then based on what is the value of x you provide to the function, it will return you the value which we usually consider as y. Yeah? And that's the function, just simply y depends on x, for example. In this case, that will be something similar, but in some cases we may have no returning value. It means that nothing is returned from the method. However, method does some actions, like it may show something on the screen, for example. It may change the values of the objects, it may change other values, and so on. So lots of different things there. In addition, in C# there is the possibility to pass the parameters by values and by references. So the difference is that if we pass the parameters by value, then in this case that will be the same way as if we pass the value from one variable to another variable, and then use it further. So again, the value is passed from one variable to another, then there's no relations between these two variables. When we pass by reference, it actually means that we don't really pass the value in between the variables. We just simply use, in fact, one variable. Yeah? So in this case, we don't pass it to the value to somewhere. We just simply use the same variable. Okay, and it means that all the changes will be reflected in the variable from where we pass the value to the method. Yeah. So that's the pass. That's the thing when we pass by reference. In addition, we also have the option out. Yeah, that means that this is the returning value of the method. Yeah, so it means that something can be returned out of the method, and then we can, in addition to the returning parameter, or instead of returning parameter, then we can use out keyword next to this parameter. Yeah, and in fact, when the method finishes the execution, then it goes back to the place where it was called. Yeah. So that's the thing. If you have any questions, you are welcome to ask them. Yes, Ileana is typing. No, just any questions, please ask. Can we modify methods after they are created? I mean, inside the class, when you define the class, of course you can modify them. Yeah, definitely can modify them. Or you mean, what do you mean actually by they are created? Inside a function block code. I mean, yes, you can modify them if you write, or you mean something else? After they are executed, no, not really. Not really. There is such the code directly, no, the code cannot be changed. No. In JavaScript, there is the possibility to actually assign different methods to the objects. Yeah. So if in C# we have the objects which do have the the names. Yeah, they do have the code. For example, in JavaScript, there is such possibility to assign the methods to the object. Like it means that you create the object, and then you can assign the method to this object. Yeah, so because in JavaScript there is less difference between the attributes and the methods. Since again for the attributes, what do we have? We have let's go here. For the attributes, we have the values, right? So they have the returning type, they have the type, data type, and we have the values. In JavaScript, there is such possibility that for the objects, you also have the attributes, of course, and in fact, next to the attribute, you can assign the function. So that would be that the functions, the methods, are actually also they are the methods, or they are the attributes. So in JavaScript, the functions are considered as the attributes. So it basically means that you have kind of attribute assigned to the object, and you can simply call them. Simply, you can call the methods from them. You can call them as the methods. All right. So that is the thing. Yeah. So that is the thing. There is some specific cases. We will talk about them a little bit later in C#. But I mean, in base concept, of course, we don't have the ability to make dynamic functions. There are some specific cases in C#. Again, we will talk about them a little bit later. But I mean, from the general perspective, there is no such possibility. Okay, so that is about this one. So, okay, then if there are no questions, then we can move forward. And then again, static and non-static. Again, I want to repeat the same thing. Static means that this is something what belongs to the class. Non-static instance, that is something to belong to the object. So first of all, in regards of methods, the first thing we need to understand is that the methods, non-static methods, instance methods, can only be called when we have the object. So it means that no object, no method call possible. That's the first thing. And then if we talk about the actual differences in between static and instance methods, then the first thing is that also you should know that from instance methods, from static methods, we cannot access instance attributes of the class. That makes quite sense, because again, just imagine that you have the static method inside the class person. Yeah, so it means that this is the method which belongs to all the persons in the world. Yeah, so there's just one unique method. But on the other hand, you have the instance attribute, let's say age. Of course, there is no actual sense we can, if we access the attribute age from the method which belongs to all the persons in the world. Yeah, because again, we access from from the method which belongs to all the persons, and then of course there is no actually I even don't have the imagination how can we access to the attribute age, because again, age, this is something what belongs to the object, and the static method, this is something what belongs to the person class in general. So again, the thing is that a static method can be called without the object created, and on the other hand, the attribute can only be available under the object. Yeah, so it means that if there is no attribute, I cannot access it. If there is no object, there's I can access it. And so it means that from the static methods we cannot access non-static instance attributes. That's the thing. Yeah, so again, short point, some small points. Method can be an instance that can be called using the object, can be called after the object is created, and so then it needs to be called from the object. Yeah, so pass the object name, the variable name, then we use dot, that's the dereferencing, and then we call the method. And then that method is called, the actions inside the method are triggered, they are triggered. For static, no need to create the object to call the method. Can be called using the title of the class. So in this case we call it from the object variable. Here we call it from the class. And so that's the difference. Yeah, if the method logic is a convenience without creating an object, then we can call it, and yeah. So in this case, computer does the class and start computers call it the method. Okay. So that's the thing, and yeah. So there were some questions about getters and setters before. So in fact, we can also have get and set methods. We call them getters and setters, and they are needed to access the private attributes of the class, of the object. So what again? What does private keyword mean? It means that the attributes and the methods can only be accessed from inside the object. And in this case, again, the question may be how can we access them from outside the object? Again, if we have some kind of value, like let's say that's the date of birth for the person, then the question may be how can others access this value? And the most usual way would be that these values are accessed using getters to read them and using setters to write them, to set them. And in this case, I mean, the more preferable way to define the attributes of the class would be that we define them as private, and later on we just simply create getter and setter methods. Why? Because it makes it makes the logic more flexible. Why? Because using getters and setters we can provide more control over the object attribute. So what does it mean? It means that you may provide some additional checks when you set the values. So that would be that if maybe your user does not have the authorization to do it, then value will not be changed. Then there may be the possibility that the input is incorrect, then this method can do the checks and correct the value, can adjust the value, modify it in the way we need it, and then set it. So yeah, that's about the setter. For the getter, similar things. Maybe we need to get the modified value, we may need to get the adjusted value, and so on. So it may be different there. But the idea is that we access the private attributes mostly using getters and setters. Yeah. So do you have any questions so far? Okay. Then if not, then you can see how getter methods looks like. So let's say that we have private attributes defined under the class. So the attributes are private, they are instance attributes. Then to then be able to access them, we can define getter methods. So for getter methods, we have the returning types, which are the actual type of the attribute. Like if we have the attribute color, then it means that the attribute color and the attribute data type is string, then it means that for the getter method of this attribute, we should have the returning type, which is also string. Yeah, so it means that we just simply return the value of this attribute, and of course it should be string. The same is here. Where we have the attribute which has the data type float, then the returning type of the getter for floating float attribute will also be will also return float value. So, and again, they are named as the prefix get, yeah, and usually that's the name of the attribute after that. Okay, so that's the get, and then similar way we have the setter methods. For the setter methods, the concept is similar. Again, we have the private attribute. The private attribute has data type. Then if we have setter, then it means that for the setter we should provide the value for this attribute. And the value should be passed this way, and then the data type should be provided, and we can then pass the value to this variable, to this attribute, using the setter method. Yeah. So that's the thing. Do you have any questions about the setter methods? Let's also go to the next example, just for you to make it more clear why do we actually may need them. Sometimes we may need to have the validation, or maybe again, as I said, the adjustment for the value. Like in this case, that would be if we have the attribute size inches, then we must check if the size is not 0, or it's not negative value, or it's not the value which is actually not allowed. Then in this case we can implement such logic check inside this setter method, which will then actually adjust the value for this for the input we provided. Okay. So do you have any questions about getters and setters? So these are just the methods. Yeah, these are just the methods. For the getter, we need to read the value of the object, and for the setter, we must set. We can set the value for the object, for the attribute of the object. So just nothing special there. Yeah. Then for the types of the variables in the class, in the previous example, it was the private variable, and it was created inside the class. But it is not the only option how to create the variable. In class, there are actually 3 options. So first of all, we create non-static variable, which is instance variable. Then we create static variable, and then we also have a local variable. Local variable is so for non-static instance variable, we know how to use them, how to create them. Just simply define them under the class, and then we can use them inside every place in our class. Yeah, I mean every non-static place in our class. And then we go to the static variable. Then it is the variable which can use actually in any place inside the class, and also outside the class. And the same as if this is public, then it can also be used from outside the class. For the local variables are the variables defined under the particular methods. Yeah, like we create the method, then inside the method we define the variable, we create the variable, then this variable may be used there. Yeah. And it will not be visible outside the method. Yeah, it will only be defined inside the method, and then it will then be available only for this method. And the data types are the same as in all the places in the code. Yeah, so all the same rules for data types there. Yeah, so again, local variable defined inside the method, available only inside the method, instance defined inside the class. Yeah, outside of a method can be used in any just for any methods of the object. Yeah, and also if it's public, then for also outside the class. For static, yeah, so we define them with the keyword static, define them inside the class, again outside the method, and the value is shared for all class objects, and also we can use it outside the class if it's public, of course. Yeah, so that's the difference. We have static variable. The only difference is that we define it with the keyword static. Then non-static is simply the same, but without the keyword static. And then we define local variable, which is then placed under the method. Do you have any questions so far? Okay, then if not, we can move on. Yeah, and variable visibility. That's okay. The question from Maria. I'm sure. We do local variables. Yes, in case you need to use the variables only inside the method, then you need to have local variables. Because again, let's imagine that you have a class with, let's say, 10 methods, for example. One method does one thing, then another method does another thing, and so on. So in this case, the question is like if you have the variable which you use only, for example, in one method, why do you need to declare it inside the class? Then it will be available for all the methods. There is no actual such thing, because at the end we also care about the structure of the code. So in this case, if we don't use local variables, then let's just you will see that we declare let's say 10 or 20 or maybe hundreds of variables on the top of the class. And of course the question may be, what's the real reason one or another variable is needed, for which cases the variables are used. Yeah, because again, let's say that if you have lots of variables defined under the class, and maybe they are most of them are just simply used in one or two methods. So maybe okay, in one method. Yeah. So then in this case we don't need them. Yeah. So if you don't need to use the variable in many methods, just in one place, then of course you should use local variable. That's one thing, but on practice there is one conceptual crucial point here, which is actually, again, as I said, the structure of the code. So what does it mean? It means that if you declare the variable which is not local, again, the primary you should think about declare a local variable. So the question would be that why do we actually need to have the public global attributes? Yeah, we call them also global attributes if they are defined under the class. So we need them only in the case when they describe the object. Yeah, so the global attributes, global variables needed to describe, again, if they're not static, then they are needed to describe the object, the whole object. Again, if we talk about the computer, then that would be the model name, then maybe date it was produced, and so on. So such things which actually describe the object. So it cannot be just like if you have the method, if you have the class computer, then you would have the variable, global variable, maybe today's date, for example. Yeah. So again, to do maybe some calculations, you may need to have the variable which describes what's the date of today. Yeah. So let's say you have kind of the method which needed it, but you don't need it for the object in general, because this is not correct, because for the object computer, current date is not what actually describes the computer, right? That's why it should be used as the local variable. So again, returning to your question, we should primarily think about why do we need to declare the variable as global one, because we primarily think about local variable. Because again, if it's not needed, if it does not describe the object in general, then it should be local. So something what is described specifically for the method. Yes. Because again, in general, if you have all the variables defined globally, then just imagine how this would look like. Yeah, like you have 10 methods, they do different things, and then you have everything defined under the class. Of course, from the readability perspective, this is not correct. That's one thing. And secondly, one moment. Yeah, secondly, you also, if it will actually mean that if you trigger, let's say, 10 methods, that in one method you may change the variable, then it will also be available then for another method, and then it can also be changed there. So in this case, again, if you declare them all under the object, then it's also a little bit tricky from the memory perspective, because it means that there is, again, what I said, there's stack memory and there's heap memory. For the methods, there is stack memory used. So what does it mean? It means that when you call the method, like in this case we call the method start, then this variable is declared. After this method, after we go through the logic of this method, then this variable does not exist anymore. So it just simply disappear. But in case we declare the same variable globally, then it will not disappear after the method call. It will stay with the object. So in this case, that's not also an efficient way to declare the variables from the memory point of view, because they will not be destroyed after we use them. And the same is here. Yeah, but in general, the first thing what we need to care about is the structure of the object. Yeah. So if we declare something what is placed under the class, then and it's not maybe static, it's not maybe not static. Then this is what describes the object. Yeah. But if it's static, then it also describes the class in this case. So that's but that's the good question. Yeah, that's a good question, because from my experience, when I started using object-oriented programming, then at first I also declared lots of global parameters, and then actually my colleague, he's my director, he actually said not to do it, and that was, yeah, he said not to do it, and the main reason was because of the structure of the objects we used then. Okay. Yeah, then the variable visibility. Again, the first thing is that we talk about the blocks. Yeah, so the same as you remember, we have the branching. So these are ifs and ifs, and yeah, branching, loops, and so on. Then for all these things, we have the blocks. Yeah, so the blocks are started with the curly brackets, and also they're finished with curly brackets. So the code is located inside the brackets, and the thing is what happens when we declare the variables. So if the variable is declared inside the block, it cannot be accessed from outside the block. That's the first thing. That's the general thing. Again, if the variable is declared from outside the block, it is visible from inside the block, but not to vice versa. Okay, let's take a quick look on some examples there. So if the variable is declared inside the block, the scope is added here. And again, what I said about the stack memory. So it means that when the block of code is called, yeah, like if that's the method, then variable then appears here. The memory is allocated. Once the method is triggered, after that the variable is actually dead. Yeah, so it's not placed in memory anymore. Yeah. So that's why it is not accessible from outside the block of code. But in this case, since we have something which is on top of the block, then of course it can be accessed from inside the inner block. Like this is the method, so of course then the variable can be accessed there. Okay. And of course for the class variables, for the global variables, the scope ends at the end of the class. That makes sense. And then we also talked about the keyword this. So as you remember, this means actually the current object. So again, when we create the object, we have the variable where we declare where this object is stored. Yeah. So in fact, this we can consider this as the variable as well, but it means actually that's the variable which stores the object inside the object itself. Yeah, so that would be that we are currently inside the object, in just any object. Where is the method set color? Then this means actually this is the variable which stores the object. Yeah, so the instance of the object we are currently located in. Yeah. So yeah, and then using this we can access the attributes first. Like in this case, we will access the attribute which is defined under this object, and we also can call the methods from this object. And what's the actual need of using it? First of all, we may need to distinguish the local variables and the global variables. Like if we don't have this, then we can access. Like in this case, we don't have this. Then it means that we access the parameter of the method provided to the method, or the variable or the local variable if it is defined here. If we use this keyword, then it means that we access the property of the class of the object. So that this is not local variable. Yeah, this is the variable defined under the class. Yeah, that's the global variable. Okay. But in fact, this that's the variable which stores the actual object. Yeah. So like in this case, when we create, maybe let's do it different. I'll show the code. Yeah. So like in this case, as you remember, we created the variable. Let's say that's my car. Then from this variable, we can access the method, and we can also access the attributes. So in this case, we have the variable my car. In fact, if we are inside this variable, like let's say, again, in this case, imagine we have this my car variable. Yeah, then it has the object here. Yeah, so that's the instance of the object. Then if we go to this method, show my info, which is here, then again, if we call it from my car1, yeah, which has this instance, we are here now. And if we use this in this case, then this will be the same as this. Yeah, so again, we have this variable, we have the object there, then this object is actually this one. Yeah, like if we go deeper, we go inside this object, then right here we can access this my car1 variable using this. Plus, in addition, we can also access private attributes, what we cannot access from this from here. Yeah, from here the only difference is that from here we cannot access private and protected attributes, but right here we can access because we are inside the class. Yeah. So that's the thing. Do you have any questions about it? So just do you have any questions? Okay, we understand. That's good. The questions are good. If you ask them. Okay, if there are multiple objects, how would this keyword... No, we cannot have multiple objects. If we are inside the method, then we can only be under the object. Again, when we have multiple objects, then it means that they have multiple instances. Like for this object, it has one instance. For this object, it has another instance. For this object, it has another instance. So every time we call, for every different object, when this method is called, actually the instance of this will be different. Again, if we call it from here, then again, the logic goes deeper. Then this will be taken from here. Yeah, so this will be this. In this case, when we call the method showMyInfo from this variable, yeah, it has this instance created from here. Then when we are here, then it will be this object. Yeah, when we are here, this will be this instance, and so on. Like every time the method is called, it depends. Yeah, so that's a good question, and this is what I actually said about the instance methods. They are called from the object. So it means that the behavior of them belongs on the object from where they called. In this case, and this is what you asked, if showMyInfo is called from here, then again this will be actually my car1. If we call from here, then in this case again the method is called, so it will go here now. Now this will be actually this one, yeah, taken from here. That's the thing. And yeah, this is also for you to understand that it's not just simply that you can say I have, for all the methods I have the same code, so it means that they will behave the same way. No, because why? Because they may have they actually have different this object. So in this case, this will behave based on the, this will have the properties based on the object it is called from. Okay, so the question from Anastasia, so if the method is written inside the class, it can get private and protected values. Yes. So that is what I said. Private attributes can be accessed, if we have private instance attributes, that they can be accessed from any instance place of the class. So again, it basically means that we talk about instance methods. Yeah, so yeah, that's also the good point from Anastasia. Every private and every protected attribute can be accessed from any method of the class. That's the point. Yeah, that's the point of using them. Yeah, so they cannot be used from outside the class, but they can be used from inside the class, and this is basically why do we need them, because otherwise if we don't have the option to access them, so that's basically the question, why do we actually need them? So of course, they can be accessed from inside the class, from all the methods of the class, yeah, which are instance. Because from static methods we cannot access these attributes because they are instance attributes. They belong to the object, so it means that the usage is based on the object. Yeah. So that is also the thing. Okay, and yeah, so using this you can also call a method. Yeah, so if Yeah, and there's dot operator. In fact, dot actually means dereferencing. Dereferencing, so it means that we go around and we go through the reference. Because again, we have the variable. Variables store the references. Yeah? They store the objects. So using dot, we can actually, again, if we don't use dot, yeah, like before we use dot, we deal with the variable. Again, variable, that's the actual place what stores the reference of the object. Again, variable, that's the box where you can put the values. In this case, the value, that's the reference. And in fact, when we use dot, we can say that we actually open the box and then do some stuff. If again, before you use dot, you cannot access any method and attribute of the object. The same as for the box. Before you open the box, you cannot access any stuff what is located inside the box. Same as here. So you can use dot to actually open this object for you and then call the method or access the attribute if you need. So that's the dot operator. Yeah, so you can call the methods from there, also access the attributes. For the console, again, also the same way. You can, what we previously did, we put dot to actually access them. Access the method from this class. Yeah, and also again, multiple level calling is possible because system has the type, system has the attribute console, then console has the method right. Yeah, so right line. So basically go deeper, deeper, and deeper, and we can get the attributes. We can access the attributes. Then again, the attributes by themselves, they can also be the objects. Yeah? Because in this case, we have the attributes which are the strings and integers, but in fact, attributes may also be the objects. Yeah, so if the attributes, they are also the objects, so it means that they can also have the attributes, so we can go deeper, then the attributes of the objects, they can be the objects, so it means that in the deeper level, there may be even more and more objects, yeah, more level of the objects, and of course from them you can access the attributes and access the methods. Yeah, and if you access the methods, for example, the methods may also have the returning types. So it means that also for the methods you may get something to be returned, and also from them after that you can call the methods or access new attributes from the value returned from the method. But we will see such cases in our experience. We will have lots of them. So do you have any questions so far? Okay, we will have more examples, so don't worry. We will use different approaches there. So okay, if there are no questions, so maybe let's have 10 minutes break and then we'll start practical assignments. Okay. Okay, let's continue. So now we will move to the practical tasks as I promised, and what's wasn't good. Yeah, actually, 1 moment. Yeah, that's assignment 1, so that's correct. So yeah, we'll skip the first one. You can check the UML diagrams by yourself. So we will mostly focus on the assignment. So we'll start the first one together, and then you will do the second assignment individually. So let's start. Yeah, so this one is currently working on, and let's go. So first of all, I'll create a new folder for this. Maybe even more, I'll create a new folder for the object-oriented programming, and from here I will create a new project for each. For each assignment, I'll create a separate folder. Assignment 1. So here I will then go and do this one. So from here I create a new project, and now I will start writing the code. So first of all, we will need to create a new class officer as shown in diagram. So in this case, I have two options. I can create the separate class, a separate file, or I can simply use the same one and just simply rename program to the officer. So maybe let's create a new file here, and that would be officer.cs. But I don't need to move it under the sub one. Yeah. So and now I can define this class. So the class would be a responder class officer, and yeah. So from here I then need to define as shown in the diagram. So I need to have name, surname, officer ID, working district, and client solved. So let's do good. Hold on. So then that would be, I will define them as private. So that will become private string name. Then that will also be surname. And surname will be string here as well. Then I have integer, which is officer ID. Then I have string, which is working district. District. And then I have console, which is integer as well. Okay. So now I can proceed with the, so that's the first part, yeah. The attributes are defined in the schema. Then the second part is the methods. So the first one would be non-argument constructor. So that's public. Again, for the constructor, that's basically the method which has the name the same as the name of the class. So that will be officer. So this is non-argument constructor. So this is non-argument constructor. So then we should have argument constructor. Usually if we say argument constructor, this should be the constructor where we provide all the values of the object. The name, surname, then working district, and then that would be the officer ID and the crimes solved. So now we have parameterized constructor. Okay, so that's the definition. So next one should have getters and setters. So let's then create them. Public string get name. So we don't need the parameter here because we just simply return from the object. But we return this name. Okay. Then the same for surname. So then I can just simply copy paste the method, and this will return surname. So then next I have working district. Get working district. So then here I will return working district. And the last one is crime solved. Oh no, hold on, we have officer ID. Then for the officer ID we'll return integer. So then this would be get officer ID. And then from here we'll return officer ID. Okay. So. And the last one is return number of crimes solved. So this will be get crimes solved. So from here we can actually return crimes solved. Okay. So that's about getters, and then the same way we can define setters. That will be also public, then void, because we don't return anything from the method. This will be set. Okay, let's start with the name. So set name. Then here we need to provide the name, the string name, and we pass the name we provided from here to the attribute of the class, to the attribute of the object. So same for the surname. Set surname. And then again here I will type surname. Surname here. Oh, hold on, yeah, double N, it's not needed. Then get working district, so we can also set working district. Oh, a moment, one quick. Thing. Yeah, there's actually one more approach. What is specific for the attributes is one moment. So okay, the question from Owen: could we just parameterize with this under the method officer? Just like that in the example before. So the thing is that for the officer, these are, yeah, of course we need to fill them the parameters from here. But what's the point? The point is that if we provide the methods from here, then here this will be triggered only at the moment when the object is created. But at some point we may also need to fill the values, yeah, to change the values after the object is created. Yeah, so for such cases we need getters and setters, just in case we may need to change them after that. Yeah, and again, difference for getters means that we return the value, because in this case we cannot access these values from outside the class. Like we are here, for example, and we use the object of the class officer, we cannot access these values, yeah, because they are private. So to access them, we need to, again, to read them, we use getters. To change the values for them, we use setters. And again, we need them because in general way it makes the code more flexible. Why? Because maybe again at this point we'll create the class, yeah, they will be private, I mean the attributes will be private, so everything's fine. But at some point, yeah, maybe say in a year, for example, for this code, actually let's say this is the working code used for your program, then at some point in the future you may have the situation when, let's say, maybe for the name you may need to introduce the rules. Like we can say that the names cannot be written, maybe names should only be written in uppercase, like all the letters must be in uppercase for all the words in the future. Yeah, like at some point you have this requirement again, like you have the code officer, but again in a year someone tells you that let's enter only names in uppercase. Like if the name is provided, then this will be something like this here, to uppercase. And so in this case names will only be provided in uppercase. And in case you have them defined as private, then it means that you can only set the name from here. So you are sure that these attributes will never be accessed from outside this class, only from here. Yeah, like in all the places you have here. So that's why we need to define them private. And again, if you are sure that this that name is not accessed from anywhere outside this class, that you are sure, then you are sure that if you, let's say, type here to uppercase, that it guarantees you that that the name will definitely be written in uppercase after that. Yeah, because it means that you cannot access these variables from outside the class and then just type any value you want. No, you are sure that this value is changed only from here, and then you are sure that it will be in uppercase after that. So, or any other requirement you may have. Okay. So that's the point. That's the point actually from the syntax point of view. From the syntax point of view, there is one more thing what can be done in C#, and this is in fact getter setter. So okay, maybe there's another syntax, but we will talk maybe a little bit later about them. So at the beginning we'll start with this approach, yeah, like creating using this syntax. There is another syntax, and C# will cover how to write getters and setters. We'll cover it a little bit later. Yeah, for now we can stick to the classical approach that we have the methods, and the methods are needed for getters and setters. Okay, so here we have set names, set surnames, set working district. So again, in this case, I need to provide what I want to set, the value I want to set. So this would be, this would be string, working district, and from here again, I will set the value of this. working district. Yeah, also I may do some validation. For example, I can check if this district actually exists or not. Yeah, because before I set, of course, before I set the district, I should be sure that this district actually exists. Yeah, so in fact, here I may do some checks on the district, like if the district does not exist, then I will not set it, for example. Yeah, so I can add such check here. So then we get officer ID, I can then do the same for set officer ID. So here I need to provide integer. So ID, and then I will fill it from here. So, and the same for get crime solved. Here I will have set crimes solved. Yeah, and here again I will have the integer. Okay. And here we go. Crime solved. First solved. Yeah, the names are not crucial. I mean, if you type something else, that's not the problem, because these are basically the methods. And getter and setters, these are the this is the purpose of these methods, and just to use them as the setters or as the getters, or just as any other method type. Okay, so here we are done with the parameters, or with the getters and setters. So then the next one, there is toString method, which is a predefined string for every object. So for every object, you'll see that we have the method toString. Oh, here. Keep this toString. Yeah, so for each object, you will see that there is the method toString, which actually shows the information about the current object. Yeah. So maybe let's just shortly test. So let's say we have officer object, and yeah. So from here I'll create the officer, and again I can provide the initial parameters. I can skip providing them. Yeah. So for example, in case I skip providing them using the constructor, I can provide them separately. Yeah? So now I have two options. I can provide the parameters now, or I can provide the parameters after the object is created. Okay, so set crime solved, let's say 10 crimes solved. So then let's set name, that would be something we check. And let's set surname, that would be sure, like this. So then, oh, of course, set not yet. Then what else do we have? Set crime solved is done. Set officer ID. So what would be something like this. Then let's set the working district. Let's do district 1, maybe. So then let's set. Okay, I guess we're done with this one. Okay, so now we created the object. And there's the method toString we can call from this object. So, and we can actually print the content of this method. So the content of this method, and here .NET, I will run it. The .NET run. Let's see, what do we have? Yeah, at this point, it just simply represents the the method of not the method, but the class name. Yeah. So, but in general, so maybe let's also do it this way. Yeah, like if we just simply display officer, what will we see? What will we see? We see the same way. So it means that when you print or basically use the value of the object as the string, like in this case we use it as the string because when we print something, then it should be printed as the string. So in this case, when we use the object as the string, then the method toString will be called. Yeah? Then the method toString will be called. Yeah, so that is about it. So and we can actually redefine this method. So there is such possibility to override. We'll talk about overriding a little bit later. So for now, I will just simply override to string. And oh, hold on, that would be string to string, of course. String. One moment, yeah. So and from here I will basically present the values of the object. So then I can say, I can basically print the values. So and then I can maybe write one name and then here I can use get name, I can use just I can directly access name, so there is no difference in this case. So then I will also write surname. Then I can show the district. That would be this district, working district. Then I can show officer ID. So that would be this officer ID. Then the next one would be crime solved. Right. So and yes, that's it. And now you will see that the method toString will actually, so in this case, when we print the object officer, it will actually print what is written inside the method toString. So let's see. We have the of course, yay, of course. One moment. My fault. Sorry, not right. Fine. Yeah, just my issue. Of course, we need to return the value. So to return the value, we actually then need to provide the value. Of course, then we will construct. We'll actually construct the string. So that's the point. I'm sorry, just a little bit confused. A little bit mixed up. Yeah. So we need to construct the string. So and the string will actually look this way. Yeah, so we print, we actually construct every line, and then for every line we create new line, which means that we go to the next one. Yeah, so it basically will return us the string with multiple lines. So let's check now. So that's the string. That's the actual value of the string, which then should be returned, and we can see that this is printed. So that's the point. To string, actually, again, it returns string value. So it should, again, we should have return, and it must return the string value. So here we have the string value constructed. And again, toString is called for all the objects when we just simply print them or use them as string. So that's the point. Here we write line, then we pass the object, which actually gets the string from the method toString. That's the point. All right. So do you have any questions about this? So if you want to get the text representation of the object, you can use the method toString. You need to override the generic one. Yeah. So as you remember, previously we had the method which returns the name of the class. Yeah. In this case, when we override it, it actually overrides the previous method and returns new text value. Okay. So that's the point. That's the point. If you have any questions, you can ask them. So. Okay, yes, the Anastasia is starting. Okay. Questions. Oh, Mario starting as well. Yeah, that's good. More questions. That's good. But in theory, we could have just created, in theory, you could have just created new method. That's correct. Same as toString. That's correct, yeah. But on the other hand, we could not then use this string this way, yeah, because in this case we would need to call the method which will actually then return the value. That would look this way, but this is of course shorter way, yeah, and it actually shows us that it will print the details about the object. But yeah, that's correct, Anastasia. We could create a separate method which then could do the same for us, yeah. But then we would need to call it, of course, separately. In this case, we call nothing, which is simply pass the object. Okay. So any more questions about it? Okay. Then if not, we can move forward, and we can move to the next one. Next one is calculate level. So we need to calculate level, and yeah, so what's the calculation of the level? That's the actual method, the method which returns the level. So it returns 1, 2, or 3. So then that would be public integer, which return 1, 2, or 3. That would be public integer get no, that would be calculated level. Calculated level. Yeah, and from here it will be calculated, and so then I need to check if this prime so value is less than 20, then the level is 1. And return 1. If, yeah, we can use if, we can use else if, no difference in this case, because if this is triggered, then this if will not be triggered. And because again, if we have if and we have return up inside if, then no other code will be triggered, and that's why we do not care about if it's if or else if. So in this case, I can say prime solved is actually I can say it's less than 40. Yeah, I can actually create such logic. Then I can return level 2. And in this case, I can also, it's larger than 14, then I can actually use else statement here, and then it will return 3. And so that's the point. Check level. In fact, I can call the method from here. I can also use it to construct my string here. Slash new. And say level. And then I can call the level. I can calculate the level from here. Yeah, don't forget to use the brackets for the methods too, because again, if non-brackets are used, that means that you access the attribute. If brackets are used, that means you access the method. One difference here. That's done. And yeah, so then the next part is create new class with the main method in it. So we have this program CS class already here. So that is done. And then we need to create 3 officers as object and print out information about them in console. So we have first one. So I can call it officer 1. Then I will need to have officer 2, or of course not console 2, but officer 1 of course. And then let's maybe do the same for officer 2. Let's maybe add something more, change something, so that will be, let's say, maybe 60. Something like Richie, not sure. Okay, then officer ID would be something like this, and let's say that that's different this way. Then we can print the information about someone. So as an alternative, we can also create the officer this way by providing the parameters directly to the constructor. So we can see that we have a constructor which is parameterized. Then I need to provide a name. I can provide a name this way. So then the name would be John. That would be something like this. Yep. Then we should follow the sequence. So the district would be, let's say, maybe district 1. Then this would be officer ID. And then prime solve, let it be, say, 38 maybe. Yep. So now we can basically provide the values this way, and then I can print the information in the next line. So in this case, that will be equivalent of code. Okay. So let's check. How does it look like? Okay, so we can see it. Oh, okay, we can see that officer ID is not provided for the last. Okay, maybe we can also print empty line after that. So maybe we can print, but just simply get to the next line here, and then this would also get to the next line. And in this case, moment, let's check what do we have on the, oh, of course, because I forgot to provide other parameters there. That will be the name. Surname. Working district. ID. And yeah, that's it. So now they should work. Okay, so now we can see that all the values are here, and the level is also calculated for each officer. Okay, so that is done. Do you have any questions about this one? In this case, there's no difference if we provide the values this way or this way. This way, this is the equivalent approach. Okay, so that is done. Then the next one is create a new array, district91 with type officer, and put all created objects of the officers in it. Okay, so that would be officer. Then we can create it as the array, and then it will be officers. Yeah, we can define it this way, and of course then we can create the array, and this will have 3 officers inside, and need to put them here. So that would be officers 0 equals officer 1, then officer 1 equals officer 1, for example, officer 2, and then officer 3 equals officer 3. And so I put them to the array. So now the array will store these officers down. Find out how many officers are with level 1 in this district. So in this case we have 2 options. We can, in this case, we won't create the instance method, because in this case we may need to have the method which actually process many different officers. So in this case we cannot have instance method here, because again, instance method is the method which does the action on one exact object. But in this case we have many different objects. So in this case what we can do, we can create the static method. And this is why the static method may be needed. So here we have static method, and we actually need to find out how many officers are with level 1 in district. So in this case we can say that we that would be integer. No, that would be integer, and that would be get by level, maybe get maybe number by level or count by level. So, and here I can provide the level I'm looking for, and then I can provide also the array. Array. So here I can then calculate. So then what I need to do, basically I need to start with the counter. So I need to define a counter. So I start at 0, and then I go for each, and I go through all the officers. And then for each I will calculate the level. So then when I say if officer calculate the level equals the level I'm searching for, then I increment counter. Yeah, so that's the point. That's the point here. And yeah, so after that, once it is calculated, I can simply turn the count from here. Okay. So that's done. And here I can then call this method. The console, right line, then we can say Oh no, hold on. Hold on. The array name, I guess, must be district 99. Okay, so maybe that's the point. District 99. Oh no, hold on, not this one. That's the officer, and this one. And so here I can say there are, and here I can do the calculation. So then that will be officer. Here I can call static method. Yeah, so I call the static method from the class, not from the object. And this will be get count by level. And here I need to provide a level, so I'm searching for the first level. And I can pass down the officers. Yeah, so there are the officers with level 1 in district 99. Okay, so this is done. So now let's see. Okay, index out of range exception. Ah, okay, yeah. So here, course it should be 2, not 3. That's the issue here. Solved. Let's check now. And yeah, so there is one officer from with level 1 in district 99. Okay. So that is calculated here. And we just simply get the result of the calculation outside. Okay, so do you have any questions about it? Okay, then if not, we can move on. We can move on, and then the next one is find out how many officers are in level which is larger than 1. Okay, so in this case we can simply create a similar method. So then count level more. Okay, so in this case we can simply change it this way, and this will practically be the same. So there are, and then I can level more. This was level creator, then 1 in district 99. Okay. So now this will be calculated. Okay, there are 2 officers. So it's correct. So there's this one is not 2. Level 3. Well, oh yeah. So there are 2. That is correct. And then the last one is find out if there is any officer with name shown. So then I can simply here check public static. Maybe what would be boolean. Yeah. Boolean check name. Check name exists. So here I need to provide name, string name, and the array. The array is the officers. So and then I need to go through all the officers again, and if officer name is equals, yeah, so again in this case you see the combination when the method returns the value and the value is actually the object, so I can then call the method from it. Yeah. So then I can call the method from it, and here I check the name. So the name is the one I provide here. So then if the name exists, so I can simply return true. Otherwise, at the end, so if we have not found any John and any officer with the particular name, then I return false. Okay. That's the point. That's the point here. And here now I can return it. So right. So and here I can do or if a short version of each statement. So that would be if so officer, then here I have check name exists. I can provide name John here, and I can provide the array of the officers. And again, shortening syntax, I use question mark, and here I have the value which will be printed if it is true. Yeah, so if the name exists, then I'll print that there is the officer with there is officer John in district. Otherwise, it will print there is no John in district. And that's it. Okay, so the question for us is why the array name officers in the main class district, why is the array name officers in district 99 in the main class it's district? That's because it is named, it is simply given in the task. So in the task you can see that create new array district 99. That's why it's named district 99. Just because that is written in the task, and no other purpose for this. And I create the methods actually in the class officer just to make them more general. Yeah. So in this case they are quite flexible because I can also check different name using this method. Then I can also check different level here, and that's why it's more flexible. But the question of to say, I mean, it's district 99 in the main class and it's officers, yeah, because basically the name doesn't matter. Again, the only thing what matters for the methods is the sequence, how we provide them to the method. Again, I don't care about the name, I only care about the sequence. So it means that if the first one is provided string, the second one is provided array officers, so I pass them from here, I receive them here. Yeah, I receive them here. So the name does not matter. Name does not matter. I simply pass from one variable to another variable. Yeah, I can give them any names I want. Yeah, so then the variable name has no difference. It has no impact. Yeah, so I can write whatever I want here. The only thing is that if I provide, the only thing is that the sequence of how I provide them. Yeah, so it means that the first one must be string, second one must be the array of the officers. Yeah, so that's the only thing what matters. And then from here it will be received as officers, and then I use this as the officers variable. So there's no difference how I name the variables, and that's the same thing as how you name the variables here or whatever they are. And you just pass the value from one variable to another variable. Yeah, so in this case you will actually pass the value from district 99 variable to officers variable. Yeah. That's why they may have different names. You just pass values in between the different variables. Okay, the question from Mario: do the real databases look similar to this assignment, or the real databases? I can actually show you one real database. Let me run one thing. Okay, so let me show you the database. That's the local host located in my computer. So that's the database. And actually the database, I mean, the concept is quite similar, I would say, because for databases we don't have the methods. Yeah, so the tables only store the, maybe let's take just any table. But yeah, so for the tables you also have the names of the fields, of the columns. Yeah, so you have the rows and you have the columns. And so you have the structure. So for the structure, there are also the names of the columns and also the types. Yeah, the difference is that usually the types are different. They are a little bit different. Also, the definition of the types is more complicated, because for the types, for the columns, you should also need to for some columns you may also need to declare the length of the values. Yeah, like for some values the length may be, let's say, maybe 20. For some values it may be different. Yeah, so it also depends. Also for the databases there are the keys. Yeah, so it means that the key values for the table, so it means that they must be unique. So they are defined as primary key. There can also be secondary key, which may be also the combination of the fields and so on. Yeah, so for databases the declaration looks and I would say it's more difficult. It's more difficult because it has, again, coalitions, so it may have also the external keys, like in one field. One field may have the relation with another field from a different table. So there are basically lots of things. There are actually lots of things to talk about. Yeah, but I mean, the main concept is that for the database tables, there are the values. But I mean, yeah. In fact, what the thing is, using such structure, you can actually read the values from the database, for example, then store them internally inside your program under the corresponding object. Yeah, then the object will have the parameters. Yeah, will have the values, and then these values can be used. Yeah, that's the good thing. From the database we use such things, like, again, in this case we have officer in general way. Like in this case I have officer. Same way I can have the class, what be maybe my admin log, yeah, which will actually represent one entry from the database table. Yeah, that is a possible case, and in fact, yeah, this is how it may be used. Yeah, I mean, the entry from the database may be used as the object inside the program. That's the real case. Yeah, that's absolutely the real case. Okay, so that's about it. If you have more questions, you can ask. And the last thing what we can do together today is, again, this scanner class. I'm not sure what scanner class. It looks like these tasks are copy pasted from Java, but yeah, in fact this is console. Yeah, we can simply read values for the officer. Okay, we need to add one officer. So let's do it. Then we simply need to we can create officer from console. So then I can say that I'm creating new officer. And so here I can create the object officer. So that would be, let's say, my new officer. Force new officer. And in this case, the thing is that I cannot really provide the values directly here because I don't have these values. So what I need to do, I need to ask user to provide these values. So in this case, it's not actually that I have nothing to provide here, right? So that's why I need to ask user to input each value. Right line, enter the name. So then I can enter the name, so I'll be my officer, set name, and I will then pass the value provided by user from console. That will be name. Okay, so the same thing would be the surname. So enter the surname. So and here I will set surname. Okay. This is done. What's the next one is provide working district. Enter working district. Then I will set it from here. What else? Then we have officer ID. And in this case, officer ID is integer number. So again, I can ask user to provide it until it is correct. So in this case, I can ask user to enter officer ID. So in this case, I can ask you. So in this case, I can check. If input is correct. So in this case, I will say try parse. So if try parse is fine, then I will go next. So then here I will ask user to read line, and then the output. So here one moment. In this case, it will be more interesting because in this case I cannot really set the value from out. So what I need, so since here I have out, I need to get this value some way. So in this case I will need to create the attribute, and this will be officer ID. And so I can maybe start with -1. Provide out. No, I mean I use out. That's fine. But the thing is that I need to set the value taken from out into the object. Yeah, and since I use setter, so using setter, I have no actual way I can. So I cannot just simply type like this. My new officer, where is it? My new officer. Set officer ID. I cannot do it this way, of course, because that's not how I can do it. And that's why I need to create the variable first, and then I can use this variable. Why -1? Yeah, that's a good question. We usually use -1 to define the, let's say, the values which actually are not usable. Yeah, for example, when we read the tables, when the row is not found, then usually -1 is returned. So it means that this is something what is not real, what is not found. Yeah, that's maybe not actual initial value, but that's kind of value which means not found. Yeah, we usually use -1 for this case. I mean, that's just up to you. Yeah, so -1 can be used as not found. Yeah, so that's up to us. Of course, you can type your value. That's not so important. Yeah, but in this case, that's not actually needed, because I mean, that's needed to make the program run. But in fact, it makes no it makes no actual difference, because in this case I will be sure that officer ID is entered. So in this case, yeah, I can try parse. If parsing is true, then I can assign the value to the officer. We set officer ID, so this would be taken from here, and I will break the loop, of course. Otherwise, I will say that the enter is not correct. Value entered is not correct. Please try again. So then the same for the crime solved, right? Enter crimes solved. Yeah, so, yeah, but that was actually the answer. Why can't I use out? I mean, I can use out, but the thing is that I cannot simply. I need to set the value from out to the method, to the object. And for the object, we have setters. Setters means for the setters, I need to provide the value. But in this case, the value should be returned somewhere. So we should have the variable where we can, for out, we need to have the variable where I can store the value. Yeah, and so that's why I create the variable here. So, and then of course I can use out. Yeah, because without the variable, I can't use out, because out means that I should place the value somewhere. But in this case, that's the only option actually. To have the variable there, I can place the value there, and the variable then can be passed. Then the value using the variable can be passed to the method after that. Yeah. So then the same for the crimes solved. And the crimes solved number. So then this will be the same. And here are these crimes solved. So here the same, crimes solved. And then here I will call set crimes solved. That will be crimes solved here. And yeah, then same again here. Is it all we have here? Name, surname, working district, and crimes solved. Okay, so now we entered all the values. So and yeah, then we need to add it to the array. Yeah, so that's why it's added to the array. Oh, in fact, in this case, I would need to then I would need to add one more element, and then I can add it to the array. To the officer, no, district 99. Oh no, hold on. That is here onto the block. And yeah, so here I can pass my new officer. So yeah, that is done. And maybe just one last thing, let's also print this officer. So now let's run. Okay. Oh, first here, of course, it should be free. And yeah, so we have no reference. This line officer, line 103. So line 103. That's the string. strange. Where was it? 103. So it means that the officer was actual new value. Okay, let's try again. So yeah, in this case, if you have such references, such thing, it actually means that the reference is initial, but that is strange a bit, because previously it worked correctly. So let's then double check. So after I printed the second officer, so yes, that is fine. Then after that, so that's the method. And get count by level. Okay, so here's the thing. Here is the thing, and that's for Oliveiro. Okay, so that's the point. Okay, and the point is that 903. One moment, so that's get count by level. Okay, so we have officer 1 that is created. We have officer 3 which is also created. Okay, I got it. Yeah, we have that's because here we have the last element. So that was the point. So in this case, what will we have? We have the element 1, element 2, and element 3. But the last element is null, because at this point it does not exist here. Yeah, because it means that the last element will simply be nothing. But since it goes through all the elements, again, remember for each, it goes through all the elements. So it means that even the empty elements will be taken here as well. So, and what you can actually do in this case we can do the following thing. We can provide the check if the officer is provided or not. So what we can do, we can check if officer equals null. That means it is not provided. Means that the cell of the array is empty. So, and in this case, if that's true, then we simply do continue. Then means that go to the next iteration. The next iteration of the loop. Yeah. So that's the point. And right now it should work fine. Not yet. Same needs to be done for next one, for this one as well. Okay. And same here. So just to escape the thing, just to escape the case when there is no officer in the array. Okay, hold on, but not done. Okay, so now I can enter my own officer. So let's enter Roger. Like this. Let's say that we district 10. So ID. So now if I enter crime solved as the text, then I will say value enter is not correct. Please try again. So now I can enter the ID. and now I have all the results about my all the properties of my custom officer. I just entered here. Okay, so that is then actually it for this task. Do you have any questions about this particular task? Again, I agree, something may be complicated, so you can take a brief look on it. Just if you have any questions, you can ask me about this one. Yeah, of course, I mean, the idea is that they won't have the time maybe to go through, to go to the next task. So for you, until tomorrow, you can take a brief look on this task, on these two classes, to check the logic there, and then prepare the questions. You can then go through this task again tomorrow. Yeah, and then in addition, you can then tomorrow you also do the second assignment individually. I mean, we'll start the session, then we'll go through this assignment again, just in case you have any questions, you can ask them. And then next one, I will give the time to you, so you can do the second assignment, and then I will be here. I will then be available for you, so then you can ask the questions, and I will also present the answers to everyone after that. Okay. So that's the point. You will do the practical thing, so you can share the code with me and with everyone, so everyone can see what's going on there, and then we can speak together and see what's wrong, what's good, what needs to be adjusted, and so on. Yeah? So basically, of course, I said individually, but I hope that it will be like even more together than simply individually. And so you'll share the code, and we can discuss together all the things tomorrow. Okay. And about this task, just any questions, I will share the code with you right now, so you can. Hey, hold on. So let me share the code with you. Git add everything. Git commit. Message. Then that is today's state. And then let's open push the changes. So now you can take a brief look on the code, and then let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so that is then it for this one. If you have any questions, you can ask me, and also we can discuss them tomorrow. Okay. So, okay, then thank you very much for your attention today, and then meet you tomorrow, and we'll continue doing the tasks then. Okay, so thank you, and have a nice evening then. Bye.